45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, making his place known in Republican politics, announcing today, Mo Brooks has my complete and total endorsement for the U.S. Senate, representing the great state of Alabama. He will never let you down. And this comes just a day after I asked him which candidates that he plans on backing during my exclusive interview. Listen to this.
I can say that, I haven't endorsed yet, but Mo Brooks in Alabama has done a spectacular job of fighting for election integrity.
What about Eric Greitens or Josh Mandel?
He's running for the Senate. You have some wonderful people in Ohio and in Missouri. You have some wonderful people running, and we'll be letting people know very, very shortly.
Okay.
To get another one.
I tried for 3. So is this just the beginning of his future in Republican politics? Joining us now to discuss, political analyst Mark Halperin. So Mark, as we were just saying, we tried because there are 5 GOP senators who are in fact resigning.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of seats where the primary contests are going to be pretty spirited on the Republican side. And so, Heather, I think you were honing in on one of the key questions, because there's no doubt that President Trump's endorsement means a lot. It means a lot in terms of not just prestige and making some news, and not just in terms of fundraising, but in the case of Mo Brooks, right now that field has 2 candidates in it, a woman, Linda Blanchard, who was an ambassador for President Trump. But this probably means no one else will get in the race of any significance, because to get in the race now would be going against the most popular Republican in Alabama. So this endorsement, you teased it out of him yesterday, it's clearly going to be the first of many. And the pressure is going to be on these candidates who get the endorsements, because they don't want to lose for themselves, but they don't want to let President Trump and his record of picking winners go down.
And what do you think happens in Georgia? Because that's a case where they would actually like to flip a seat with Senator Warnock.
Yeah, look, as you know, Bob, beating a senator is easiest the first time they're up for re-election. And of course, Senator Warnock will not have served a full term. He'll still be introducing himself to the voters of Georgia. That's a state where it's pretty wide open. The field of candidates is far from set. Mo Brooks has a very close relationship with the president. It's gone on for a long time, particularly around the election. He was a real foot soldier in the Trump army. So that was probably a relatively easy one. In places like Georgia, Ohio, Missouri, I think President Trump and his team are going to probably take their time a little bit more to find someone who fits 2 basic criteria. One is someone who matches up with the America First agenda, and someone who they think can win the primary and the general election.
Yeah, let's listen to what the former president did have to say, his explanation for Congressman Mo Brooks and the endorsement. Listen. Well, actually, that's not sound, although he did describe this as well when he was speaking with us yesterday. He said that Mo is a great conservative Republican leader who will stand up for America first, no matter what obstacles the fake news media, the rhinos, or socialist Democrats may place in his path. So he went pretty far yesterday in our conversation without making the specific endorsement. But as you heard, we also asked about Greitens. We also asked about Josh Mandel. I'm not sure he actually heard either one of those names, but there have been rumors that he is leading or what do you call it? Leaning that direction to endorse him as well.
Well, the Ohio race is fascinating. It's a big field of candidates, all of whom can lay claim one way or the other to maybe being the Trump choice historically, based on their rhetoric. Josh Mandel, who's run statewide before, including for Senate, has been as outspokenly supportive of Donald Trump as almost anybody, and yet there are other people, Jane Timken, the former party chair, who certainly also have strong MAGA credentials. In Alabama, this businesswoman, Ms. Blanchard, who didn't get the endorsement, in reaction to President Trump endorsing Mo Brooks, she did not take her MAGA marbles and go home. She talked about how much of a supporter she is of President Trump, how she was an early supporter, a strong supporter, served in his administration. And I suspect she will continue to try to be the Donald Trump candidate in that primary, even though she's not the endorsed candidate. And I think you'll see that in Ohio, in Missouri, in Georgia. Those states in the primary, they're all going to want to be the Trump candidate, even if they're not the official Trump candidate.
So you don't envision that there are going to be Republican candidates that actually do not seek his endorsement?
It's hard to imagine, Bob, anybody. Now, some may try harder than others. And I think you look in Ohio, there's 3 or 4 or 5 candidates who may get in the race, who could end up being the nominee. Some of them, I think, will try harder than others because they've got a better stake to the claim of potentially getting that nomination. But there will be people, as there was in Alabama, there will be people who on paper would seem like shoo-ins to be the Trump endorsed candidate, but they're just not going to get it because unless he breaks practice and endorses more than one candidate, he's going to pick his favorite. And again, they're very focused. They don't want the president, former president, his team, they don't want him to make endorsements and have those candidates end up losing the primary or winning the primary and losing the general election. So they're going about this pretty methodically. And I think in Mo Brooks, they picked a pretty safe choice.
Yeah, he wants to be the kingmaker if he's going to go and do it. Okay, Mark, thank you very much. Mark Halperin, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Mark.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, where real news for real people.